And in terms of substitutions or replacements, you know, if you're in the comments and you're like, well, what if I don't like beans? I'm not going to reply and be like, well, I guess someone's going to be hungry. Do you even shred, bro? Hey, so this is just an in-depth recipe video that I made regarding the experiment I did with cynarin and artichokes. I'm going to link that below if you're interested. But it is a stuffed artichoke with charred cabbage and a cannellini bean puree. I'm going to walk you through the recipe, and at the end I did a full nutritional analysis so we can look at the pros and the cons and the benefits of this dish. For the experiment and also for my dinner, I'm going to be preparing artichokes the way that I did when I was in Florence. I have some fresh artichoke here, and then I also have a bowl with some lemon water. We're going to take this and you want to cut it like about right through the middle. Beautiful. I like to dip mine in the lemon water right now just so like it doesn't get all brown beforehand. With all these extra leaves, you can boil them and do something else with them, but to be honest, I'm probably just gonna discard them. Basically, like a flower petal, you're just gonna go ahead and start peeling back and ripping off all of these really tough leaves. It's gonna be a little bit more difficult to cook. You wanna get it so that these leaves are soft, so you can either just kind of bite one of the discarded leaves, and if it's still really tough, then that means you just have to peel more. You're gonna notice that the leaves get a little bit lighter in color, and that means that they're probably gonna be softer. And now that I can see that they're very soft, like I can get my teeth through them and they're not super fibrous, that's where I'm gonna stop. Stem, first thing I kind of do is just cut it diagonal, the top off just like that, and very carefully remove the outer layer of the artichoke so that you just have the skin off and you just have the fibrous stem remaining. And while you're doing this, you're also going to want to kind of try and cut off all these little extra stubs from what you cut off before. But just be very careful not to break the stem. And here we go. So you can just go ahead and put this in the water. We'll move on to the next step. Now I'm going to shred some Parmesan cheese. Or you can just use the store-bought kind, but I'm going to shred mine. Do you even shred, bro? So there's all my cheese. It's about, I would say maybe a cup. And go breadcrumbs that are seasoned. So I'm just gonna add about an equal part. And I'm gonna season with some black pepper and some oregano. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil, but not a lot. Just like a little so that it'll kind of stick together. A pot with a little bit of olive oil in it. And I'm just gonna put it on a very low heat. There isn't really a nice way to stuff these. The way that I do it is just with clean hands. I kind of start from the middle and I'll just start shoving the cheese and the breadcrumbs into every little layer that I can. They're fully stuffed. I'm just going to go ahead and turn it upside down and place it into my pan. Now that you're done making an absolute mess of your counter space, I have all my artichokes in here and I have the heat on medium-low. I just heated some up in the kettle and I'm just going to pour it into you just kind of want enough to cover the bottom of the pan. You're just going to cover it with a lid so that the artichoke can steam. Okay, honestly, I don't know why this meal got so extra, but now it is, so. Now cabbage is very bitter, and I'm going to put it on the broiler to even give it a little bit of char to make it a bit sweeter. But I'm also going to keep some raw so we can try them with the artichoke to see if it actually makes a difference or not. Put some oil on them. I'm not going to put any seasonings on because I don't want them to burn. I want them to char first. So I'm going to pour it on the broiler setting until they're charred. While I see my artichokes, I'm going to start by making my sauce for the cabbage. Caramelize some onions and some mushrooms. So I have the heat on about medium-low, and I'm just kind of leaving it here to let all the water evaporate and stuff. You can see at the bottom there's a caramelized layer of cheese, but it's not burnt, and there's no more water left in the pan. And I can also stick the stem with a fork all the way through, so that's how you know the artichokes are done. And they look honestly gorgeous, and they smell great. I don't like mushrooms. I don't like them when they're raw, but when you caramelize them, I don't know why, but they taste so delicious. So even if you don't like mushrooms, it's also going to be blended into a sauce, so you probably won't taste it anyway. Yeah, I've had my cabbage in the broiler, and I think it looks honestly beautiful. I think I'm going to flip it, and then we're going to do the other side. Flipping it is easier said than done, but at least there's two pieces still intact, so we're going to put it back in the broiler. I'm also adding white miso paste. If you combine two things that have umami flavor, so those are things like tomatoes, miso, mushrooms, it actually like intensifies the umami flavor up to 8 times what it originally was just by combining two of them. So that's why in a dish where I'm adding miso or soy sauce, or shoyu, as you call it if you're back home, I always try to add at least 2 things that have umami flavor because I just think it makes the dish taste so much better. I'm gonna go ahead and add in my garlic now. Add some white beans. These taste plain, but that's perfect because we're just gonna go ahead and brown them in the pan. We have our beans and all of our caramelized veggies, and they've all been nicely toasted for some time now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pour all of this into my mini blender. I've had my cabbage in the broiler, and I think it looks honestly beautiful. I think I'm gonna flip it, and then we're gonna do the other side. Flipping it is easier than said than done, but at least there's 2 pieces still intact, so we're gonna put it back in the broiler. Swag. The heat back on so that we can get all the brown stuff off of the pan, and we're gonna pour it into the blender. Oh, we blend. Now, if it starts getting too thick, you can always add water. It's just a little grainy. I'm not gonna strain it. That's actually really good. It's very creamy, and it's a little bit sweet, even though we haven't added any actual sugar. I have some leftover silken tofu. This is optional, but if you want more protein in it, I would recommend doing this. And if you use silken tofu, it just kind of thickens the sauce a little more, so I'm gonna blend that as well. That's the time where you can taste for your seasonings. I added like a pinch of salt. It did not need a lot of salt, and I added a little bit of garlic powder. That's a really nice cream sauce, guys. My show plate chef, I did eat part of it during the experiment, but I caramelized the endive, so it's actually going to be a little less bitter on its own, but also I have the artichoke to pair with it, as well as some creamy sauce. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you, that's bloody scrumptious. Just some sort of hot sauce. I think it's missing heat, but I added some lemon juice in as well, and I feel like that really made the flavors delicious, honestly. Hey guys, so I'm just gonna do a quick nutritional overview of my analysis that I did, and I'm gonna have photos at the end of everything, so I just want to explain it before you see the numbers. As we talked about in my experiment, this was all about trying to inhibit sweet receptors, so basically try to naturally increase sweetness without adding added sugar. So we did that by caramelizing the cabbage, and also we learned that cynarin inhibits sweet receptors, which can make things taste a little sweet and maybe even a little less bitter. So we also have the artichoke in there. As I want to note in the recipe, I said that you can either use nutritional yeast or Parmesan cheese. I did the nutritional analysis with half the amount Parmesan cheese, half the amount nutritional yeast, just so it's kind of like an average. But I would just like to note that if you choose nutritional yeast over Parmesan cheese, your sodium's going to decrease, your cholesterol amount's going to decrease, and also a little bit of your saturated fat. Actually, all of your saturated fat, because this is a plant-based recipe. There's 38 grams of protein in one serving, which is really, really great. And there's also 37 grams of dietary fiber, which is 132% the recommended intake. Now, fiber is really great for your body, really great for your digestive system. But I just want to note, I'm going to be real with you guys. The reason why it's great is because, it flushes everything out. So we're just going to be mindful, right? Because if you make this recipe, just, be ready, have some excess near to something, right? Because I don't want to get an email saying someone got a code brown and it's my fault, okay? That's all I'm going to say. Moving past that, this recipe is also really rich in iron and potassium, makes almost 60% of your daily recommended value. So that's really, really awesome. If you're deficient or you want to have more, this is a really great recipe for you. And in terms of substitutions or replacements, if you're in the comments and you're like, well, what if I don't like beans? I'm not going to reply and be like, well, I guess someone's going to be hungry, right? This is a dietetics channel. This is all about making sure that you guys can get the most out of this. So if you have questions about substitutions, I literally made a comment in there about gluten-free. If you want to make this gluten-free, you can switch out panko breadcrumbs for either gluten-free ones, or you can even crush up gluten-free crackers. If you're lactose intolerant or you don't want dairy, you don't want cheese, once again, you can use nutritional yeast. So there's a lot of substitutes and replacements that we can make. Don't be afraid about asking me. But, if we're making baked beans and you don't like beans, well, that's just tough, right? But for this recipe, it's very adjustable. You can even add meat if you want to. But if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments.